Hello, welcome back. This is Dad Chats 2, episode 10, double figures now. Today I'm going to be talking to Emma Shiel. Emma's had type 1 diabetes, there she is. Emma's had type 1 diabetes for 20 years. So, a good long time. Emma's doing an important study at the moment. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit later in the video. But first, let's find out a little bit about Emma and type 1. So, good afternoon, Emma. How are you today?
Good afternoon. Yeah, I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, good, excellent. It's good to see you. We've had a few chats on email about one or two things, but we'll get to that in a little while. So let's find out about you today. Type 1 diabetes. Can you tell me when you were diagnosed and what happened?
Yeah, so I was 5 years old. Funnily enough, it was like around the leap year. I think it was actually on the leap year. So trying to work out my exact anniversary is so hard. We always just say like the last day of February. So it was when I was 5 years old. I had like all the typical signs of going to the toilet all the time. But because I was like in primary school, they all thought I was being bullied. So it's like, oh God, she like needs a wee all the time. She always needs to leave. She wants to sleep. She doesn't want to speak. So it went underdiagnosed for far too long, like honestly, far too long. And it got to the point where I was like a little bag of bones. And then eventually, um, I remember laying on the floor. I've got an older sister, and we were like play fighting on the carpet in the living room. And my mum got a call, and we all knew, and I was only 5, and I knew it was bad news. And she just looked at me and she was like, "Yeah, I'll get a bag together." And then, like, away in the blues and twos. And then, yeah, I had diabetes, and that was my new life. Yeah, so it was, felt quite dramatic at the time. And I guess it is, it's a big life event. But obviously now it's just my normal. And because I was so young, I kind of say I was fortunate to not really grieve my past life because I don't really remember. I remember times where I was like 4 maybe, but I always picture myself having an insulin pump, something like that. And my mum's like, no, you didn't have diabetes then. So it's quite a weird complex I have about it. But yeah, so that's kind of my diagnosis story.
Yeah, it's almost like a complete life, isn't it? Because I guess the younger we think back to our young years, it gets hazier the further we go back. And being just 4 or 5, that must be, I don't know about you, but I'm super hazy about that sort of time. So
Oh yeah.
it must feel like almost an entire life, I guess, with type 1. It's
Yeah,
it's funny that you
absolutely.
mentioned that having it at such a young age. Do you feel that might have been a bit easier for you as well? What if you were diagnosed lately as an adult? Do you think that's a harder thing for people to cope with compared to younger people?
I think there's kind of two sides to the coin because I think, yes, definitely in one sense, especially, in my study, I'm talking to people who've been diagnosed at 40, 50, 60, things like that. So obviously they tend to grieve their past life, a lot more than I would because I don't really remember. I barely had, functionality to even think that things existed out of view, never mind, not having diabetes. So in that sense, yes, I think it is easier when you're diagnosed when you're younger. But back then we didn't have the technology. I had to learn how to inject when I was 5. It was a really, really strange time. And then I think, it didn't stop me then becoming a teenager and rebelling against it. So I still hadn't really accepted it. So I think, yeah, it might be easier in some sense, and that I don't remember not having diabetes, but did it still mean that down the road that I rebelled against it and did things I probably shouldn't have done with diabetes? Yes, absolutely.
Hey, we're gonna need to talk about that. I think. Yeah, but that makes total sense. So 20 years ago, 2004, I guess, was it sort of that? It must have been that time,
Yeah, yeah.
20 years ago. So, you mentioned that you've always used a pump, but you also said you needed to learn to inject. So, were you on pens to begin with, and then move to a pump?
Yes, I was on multiple daily injections, long and fast acting for 18 months. And my mum, honestly, is the best person in my entire life. She pushed every day for me to get a pump as a young child. And It was literally the day I got diagnosed, my mum probably read every single thing on the internet and she became my pancreas. I'm very, very lucky to have a very supportive household, my dad and my sister included. They were all injecting oranges for like several months trying to learn how to do it, you know. So I'm really, really lucky and I think that really, really helped me on my journey. But yeah, my mum hammered them every single day. They must have been sick of her. And eventually I got a Roche pump. So I had that. But because I was still so small, everything it hung on used to like pull my pants down because I was just still so tiny. And I was quite like I was very skinny after diagnosis for quite some time. And everything I wore the pump on, we just used to laugh because it just be
You
hanging
just,
down a ton. But yeah,
oh,
ever
the
since
weight
then
of
I've
that
had
pump.
pumps. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I did have a
Oh,
short term where just before I'm on closed loop now, Dexcom and T-Slim. Just before I got that, I was on daily injections again for around 6 months or something like that, just because the pump I had prior, the Omnipod, I was really, really struggling with it, and I had an accidental overdose with my insulin,
oh.
and it just made me very untrustworthy of a pump. So I went on to insulin injections and was praying for the closed loop, and then eventually got it.
Mm.
So it was very, very bizarre to go back onto injections. It really felt like, obviously, I've always been grateful for the tech, but in that time, I've never felt kind of so, for lack of a better word, diabetic. I just felt so like I had diabetes the entire time. And not that I obviously don't know I have it. Obviously, I know I have it every day, but I don't walk around feeling like someone with diabetes constantly. But when I was on injections, I felt that it was very much in the forefront of my mind at all times. And it interacted
Yeah.
with everything.
Yeah, it's quite similar actually. I suppose I don't know how many injections you were taking per day. I was up to six, seven, eight per day. It does feel like it's always there, isn't it? Something to do, something to think about, as
Yeah, and
opposed
I'm a
to
serial
close.
snacker, so
Yeah. Well, yes, I'm quite partial to the odd coffee and a cake. So I want to know about what happened with Omnipod. So you said was it an accidental overdose or what happened?
yes, there's kind of two isolated occasions that kind of led to me coming off of it. And I'm not to put anyone off it at all. Like I know people now who are still on it and they love it. And I loved it for a long time, especially in high school, because I didn't really want anything on shore and tubes or anything. So, it was great while I had it, until it wasn't, I guess. But I think it just reminds us that a lot of these techs, as great as they are, there's still room for improvement. But yeah, so the first one was kind of my fault. I was very stressed. I was doing my Master of Research. I was just working all hours as a waitress in the bars. And then I was coming home and doing my Masters of Psychology research until like 4 a.m. And I was just burning the candles at both ends, like entirely. And I was eating really poorly. And I remember typing with one hand and eating with the other because it was like 3 a.m.
Yeah.
thinking I've not eaten all day. And I had this moment of like, I've gone insane. And I was eating and typing. I thought, well, let me give my insulin. I've forgotten to do it. So I went on the meter, typed in the insulin, carried on. And then all of a sudden, I just felt myself go a bit like, oh, I feel a bit funny. And I looked at my blood sugars and they were dropping like I've never seen them drop in my entire life. And I looked at my pump, and instead of giving 5 units, I had given 2 doses, 2 doses of 5 units, which is 10 units. And for my ratio, that would bring me down 100 millimoles. So I'm very sensitive to insulin. So I dropped out. The only time I put down my masters, I
I
dropped
can
everything and
imagine.
oh yeah, and I walked into the living room and I just went to my fiance. I just went, call the ambulance. And he was like, just no questions asked, like bam, straight away. And I have them hypo kits, the injection ones. So I did that. I've never done it
Glucagon.
before.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
glucagon
wow, that needle
injection.
is big. Yeah, that is the
Yeah.
biggest needle I've ever put in my body in my entire life.
Mm.
So that was that. And then from there, I became a little bit, I don't know if I trust myself. I was having a bit of every time I was giving insulin, I was like, oh, I didn't already did it, do it, did I? And I was kind of constantly checking and having a bit of an anxious, reoccurring thought about giving insulin. And then just as I'd got over that, I randomly started dropping again, kind of a few months later, and we couldn't figure out why. And because I'd had this moment, 2 to 3 months or 6 months ago, whenever it was, where I'd overdosed, I ripped off the pump because I was so scared of it. I ripped it off again. And when I ripped it off, I could see there was kind of just soaking wet underneath. And I thought, oh, it's leaked into me. And I didn't know how much was in me and if that was the reason. Anyway, I ended up having to do that injection again. The ambulance came and I've had so much sugar, it was unbelievable. And the ambulance staff agreed. They said that there's no reason why this should have happened. You've not given any insulin. So all we can blame is the pump. But when I took it up with Omnipod, no one wanted to listen. So unfortunately, that is a case that remains unsolved. But yeah.
I can completely understand why you would then switch.
Yeah, so
You
that's
know
when I went on to MDI then.
yeah, I can totally imagine why. So and obviously you're leaving Omnipod alone now. You're not coming back to that one. You moved to Tandem, T-Slim X2. You've got
I have, yeah.
Dexcom. Are you on G6 or G7 or which one do you have?
G6.
G6. So you're close loop now.
I am, yeah.
You're up there with the posh tech people.
Yeah.
How is it helping? Is it much better than MDI? Is it much better than pumping on its own or?
I think again, and I'm probably such a realist. As much as I'm not negative, I always like to point out the good and the bad, play a bit devil's advocate. It's not a cure, it's not an artificial pancreas in my eyes. However, is it the best tech I have ever owned? Yes, absolutely. Has it given me a new lease of life? Yes. Has it brought down my A1C? Yes. It's done multiple things, and I would be so lost without it now if it got taken away. So yeah, the most amazing piece of tech I've ever set eyes on, and I'm so thankful that people like Dr. Path Carr have brought this into the UK and have pushed for people to have this. It's incredible. However, it still means a lot of input. It still means a lot of thinking. And it means a lot of trust, which, as someone who didn't trust the last pump, it's quite a difficult mental barrier. I remember when I first got it, and I've had it about a year now, and the nurse just said to me, I only had about an hour session on how to learn to do it. And then when I got home, I was like, oh God, what have I done? And she said to me, if you start going low, just leave it, just see what happens. And I was like, really? So I remember going low like that week or that night. And I was so stressed out because I'm so scared of going low. And then eventually I just saw my blood sugars just go slightly up and then back to normal. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have never had that in my entire life. So yeah, it's great, but it takes a lot of trust. And I still trip up with it sometimes. I still give insulin with it when I shouldn't because I'm so used to doing it myself. So a few ups and downs probably for me more than you should do, but I think that will come in time and it will only get
Yeah,
better from here, really. So yeah, no complaints. I
yeah.
love it. Yeah.
I'm glad you touched on both sides, positives and negatives, because yeah, we've seen a lot of media headlines, haven't we, in the last month or so, maybe, and they've kind of almost touted it as some sort of cure. And as you mentioned, it's not a cure. There's still a lot of work involved. But for me, and it sounds like maybe for you as well, it's making life a little bit easier, a little bit less burdensome, especially when, hypos and spikes as well. For me, it's just taking the edge off those and making life a little bit easier, which is something, definitely. It's a step up the ladder, I guess, but it's not a cure. Definitely not a cure.
Absolutely, yeah. And I find the kind of rhetoric around it being a cure or a pancreas quite harmful in some way because I feel like we've been dying for diabetes to be taken seriously. And as it starts to become serious, it's then all of a sudden cured in the media's eyes, which means naturally people go, oh, great, we don't need to care about that anymore, when people only just started caring about it. So for me, it's like, yes, celebrate the accomplishments because, it's never been an easier time to have diabetes in that sense. But there's still many, many things related to it. There's still cannula changes. There's still, cartridge changes, occlusions, and input to the actual pump, and insulin lumps, and so on. The list goes on. So I think it's really
Yeah.
important that while the media are paying attention to it, say actually while you're talking about a cure, yes, we need one. This isn't one.
Absolutely, yes. And there's quite a lot of people on social media that have lately moved on to closed loop, and the same systems that you and I use. We use the same sort of thing, T-Slim and Dexcom, and they're not finding it that easy to begin with. And it's taking, they don't understand that you have to tweak these things, your sensitivity and your basal, and there's a lot of information before you can get that sort of not a flat line. I get flat line sometimes, but not a 24/7 flat line, but a more smoother life with your blood glucose. I'm not sure that that's spoken about enough. There's work involved with closed loop, and when you put the work in, it is good, but there's ongoing work as well
Yeah,
afterwards.
it's a learning curve to be like, yeah, for real. Because only yesterday was I talking with my fiance saying, oh, I've actually changed my ratio, I've changed this, I've changed that because it just hasn't been working for me recently. And I don't know if that's maybe heightened stress with my PhD and things like that. I'm not really sure why. But I just, because you're so used to this kind of rhetoric of it will do everything for you, you forget actually, maybe I do need to tweak something. So I tweaked something yesterday and I'm thankfully seeing some results today. But it's also very easy to tweak. So it's like, yeah, you might have to tweak things, but I'd rather tweak things and be feeling amazingly better the next day than, go back to injections.
Yeah, yeah. I would imagine most people that move over would get to that stage as well eventually. It's just that, yeah, sometimes it can take a week or two, maybe a month or two. Depends, the time and energy you've got to put into to setting up your closed loop and finding that nice even keel. So you've mentioned there the PhD. Let's talk about that. What are you doing? What's going on?
Yeah, PhD people, me included, talk about it like it's my newborn. They're like, "How's the PhD going?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's going well. Bit sleepless nights." I love my PhD so much. It is taking every ounce of energy out of me. I think I might have tonsillitis, but I am absolutely loving it. So to give you a background onto the build up of the PhD, I began in psychology actually at GCSE, and that was because of the counselling that I received for my diabetes in high school to help deal with it. And the minute I was discharged from that, I thought, I want to do what that person did for me. She changed my life. So I went into GCSE and I was really thankful to be able to do psychology. Then I went to college and did childcare and psychology. Then I went to uni, Huddersfield Uni, did my Bachelor of Psychology with counselling. And then, funnily enough, halfway through the counselling module, went, actually, I want to do research instead. So then I kind of diverted, did a Master of Psychology research. And then it wasn't until going to my PhD that I felt ready to explore diabetes because I knew it was going to take me being fully on board and having no reservations to explore that so deeply. So I felt ready and it was something that I was, really looking forward to do. But still, yeah, very nerve-wracking experience. So, the PhD is 3 years. You can do it in two. Not many people do. So most of the time, it takes people about four. So I'm in my second year right now. The first year is all kind of reading on reading on reading on reading, and then the second year is when it all kicks off. Hence why I've now become very vocal about it because now's the time to. And yeah, so I looked into type 1 diabetes and work because I don't know about you, but work has probably been the biggest thorn in my side in terms of diabetes. And I just have struggled with trying to integrate the two very much so. And then I looked at the research and the literature, and it all says the same kind of thing. But I found that all of the research says, yes, there's a problem, but no way to solve it. So I was like, great, this is where I'll focus. And there's that quote that keeps going around from Parthakar, and he said it again recently about how um, research, unless you're involving people lived experiences and making impact, something like that, it's just a line on your CV. And I am very, very kind of passionate about making it more than a CV thing because obviously I have diabetes for one, so I care about it so much. But two, I want to see what people say and the voices of people actually be acted on. And I find that a lot of the intervention schemes, toolkits, what have you, would be different had people with diabetes informed them more or at all. So yeah, I'm very, very keen on we use the term patient and public voice, but I'm very keen on just actually people with diabetes' voice. So yeah, I really want people with diabetes to be at the forefront. So I've been kind of leading with this researcher with diabetes, working with people with diabetes. So it's like, an insider perspective from every single angle. And I think that's what makes it kind of so important and so fun and interesting and insightful because, a lot of the participants have said to me, you just understand, so I can just tell you. And some people have said they wouldn't have taken part had the researcher not had diabetes. So it's interesting, to say
Yeah.
the least. And we've had a very, very eclectic sample of people. Actually, not many men, which is interesting, which I don't know if that's saying anything. But I think
Mm.
ultimately, without speaking too soon, kind of the take home from this will be the classic thing that is running through diabetes at the moment of language matters and how a lot of these kind of small issues can become big issues because of how we perceive diabetes, or not we, but how people without diabetes might perceive it. And, comparing you to someone's, grandparent who has lost their eyeballs and the fingers and the toes. And I've heard
Yeah.
it a million times.
Yeah. Me
So, yeah,
too.
so
Yeah.
a psychology
It says
PhD from someone with diabetes for people with diabetes, and hopefully with many stakeholders help making it make an impact and making it stick. So yeah, still open for
excellent.
recruitment. So if anybody wants to take part,
Oh,
happily have you on.
absolutely. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to put Emma's info down below so people can take part in that. So is it people that are working or people that have worked and self-employed, and it's all based upon. Is it just type one and work, or all types of
Just type
diabetes?
one, yeah. I think in the future I will do one on type two or both types, but I think for now we're focusing on type one just because that's where the least of the research is in terms of that kind of thing. And it's where the least of the interventions are and such. So focus on type one for now, and then we can really nail that. And then I think in the future I would love to do something with type two included, because I think as well something that will definitely come out of this is kind of that divide between type one and type two, which is something I'm really passionate about getting rid of. And I think that divide does need to be abolished. We're all on the same team, we're all in the same fight. So there's no ego involved. It doesn't matter how you got diabetes. We all have it, and let's help each other.
Yeah, I think that divide, and I think divides within all types of diabetes can cause stigma and nasty comments, and it doesn't help anybody, does it? But so type one to begin with, and you mentioned you don't have many men. I'm going to take part, fellas. So come on, if I can do this, get involved. So I'm going to do it. I'm going to push some other men to do that as
Great,
well.
thank
So
you.
hopefully that'll
Yeah.
boost your male numbers a little bit. Um, what Partha said, excellent. Yeah, don't just be a line on your CV. Make these things useful. And because you live with type one, wow, it's perfect, isn't it, for your position and where you are with your health and your life and going forwards. And that sort of makes sense that people may not want to take part, but may want to take part simply because you have type one. You understand what they're talking about. You can have that open flowing conversation. So so a little bit more about the study, and then we'll get on to something else. If I was to take part today, what happens? What do I do? Tell me how to begin as I get a Diet Coke.
Yeah, sure. So, first of all, there's the ethics side of it, which is a little boring, I'm sorry. It's an A4 piece of paper with a lot of information on about what the study is, what the aims are, what will happen if you take part, what will happen afterwards. That will be followed by a consent form where you agree, hopefully, to be interviewed, to be recorded, and analysis, and who recruited you, i.e., where did you see it? Because I've had a JDRF also helping me as well. So I'm going to let them know how helpful they were, which has been amazing. So shout out to JDRF for that one. So that's what happens, kind of the boring side of it. Once you've got back with the consent form, we'll decide a date and a time that's good for both of us. And then there's no preparation needed, no writing needed. It is just a simple two-way conversation. The methodology calls it an interview, but for me, it's a conversation. It's a two-way conversation where I have some pre-prepared questions, but also some spontaneous ones as well, just based on your own unique experiences. And everything we talk about will be about work. So that will be to do with self-management. It will be to do with prejudice, stigma, interventions, support, kind of all angles of work. And you can throw in your own ideas there as well. So it's a co-production study. So that means that every participant that's been involved, I've asked them to comment on some things that they would like or rate things that people have already said. So every time I interview someone, I've kind of got a more in-depth question at the end about what we can provide. So it explores your experience going into the problems and then what can we do to fix it. Hopefully I'll get everyone sorted and it'll be transcribed in no time. And then I will be interviewing stakeholders, which is a fancy word for health professionals, bosses, managers, employers, all them kind of people. And that will be kind of the sense checking aspect of it, which basically means here is my synthesized analysis of, a sample of 20 people or something like that, depending how many we have overall. This is what we want, what is achievable, and then we'll work through together, go through a few of the interventions and so on, see what can work, maybe improve some, maybe make things more feasible for the workplace. And my ideal scenario is to come up with multiple ideas or guidance and so on, because not everyone wants the same level of accommodation in work. Some people don't want any. Some people want as much as they can have. Some people just want somewhere to give an injection. So, it's going to have hopefully some kind of tier system and various ways that we can support diabetes better in the workplace that will hopefully be transferable as well to type 2 and other long-term conditions as well. So type 1 is the focus, but hopefully, and I'm very kind of inclusive on this, that we can come up with something, yes, that is right for our sample, which is people with type 1 diabetes, but can it be changed into something to help people in general with long-term conditions? Hopefully, yes. So that's my study in a nutshell.
Perfect. Amazing. It sounds good. Honestly, it does. It sounds like that could be super helpful going forwards. So, you've heard what Emma said, guys. Get involved, not just men. Come on, all of you. If you've been in work, if you've listened to what Emma said, and that's affected you, and you feel passionate to get involved in this study, just do it. It's not going to take you too long, and it's going to be helpful, maybe for you, but people in future as well. So definitely get in touch with Emma and get started with that. Okay, Emma, we're coming towards the end now. I think we've done about half an hour or so, so we sort of hitting that sort of cut off time. I'm going to put all your links down below to your social media and how people can get involved in the study, of course. Is there anything else that you'd like to talk about today that I think we mentioned burnout in an email exchange. Is that something that you'd like to talk about and you're passionate about as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think burnout is something that can be experienced in every facet of life. So I think it's the one thing that people without diabetes can relate to. Everyone's had that, like, I'm so sick of doing this, I'm so sick of feeling that way, or something like that. So I think it's one thing that everybody can relate to, no matter your diagnosis. But for me, burnout is something that, yes, it's spoken about here and there, but I don't think it's got as big of an audience as I'd like it to do and enough people speaking on it. I think burnout for me is something that I can have on a regular basis, but then also not at all. And it shows itself in many, many ways. And I just think, if particularly being involved in my PhD and becoming so involved in diabetes, it's been amazing to have the conversations with other people. And I think it really highlighted to me actually how much being involved in the community can help so much, because I've always been involved in the community to some aspect. I've had friends in America that I've visited multiple times with diabetes, and I made friends with them in COVID, in lockdown online on the DLC. So, I've always been involved to some extent, but never as much to be doing research within it and things like that. So, I think being so involved has really made me shine a light on my own thoughts and feelings about diabetes and, what affects me and what might not affect me and things. And I realized burnout actually is something that is always kind of running in the background, which I never noticed before. Of that, just little subconscious thought of, oh, I've got to do a finger prick now because my Dexcom's not working. Oh, I can't be bothered doing that. Oh, do I have to do that? Oh, I've gone low again. And you don't realize actually these thoughts can get you down. And I think, just chatting and having that me too and just getting it off your chest and giving yourself permission to have a little bit of a moan actually is really helpful. And it's not always sunshines and rainbows. You don't always have to be setting a very positive example. You can actually just give yourself a day off, and that's absolutely
Yeah.
valid and okay.
Yeah, definitely, definitely, guys. I mean, the online community's been about quite a while now, and I've noticed the conversation has moved towards more towards mental health and issues such as burnout, attached to diabetes, not just type one, but all types of diabetes. It is a big thing, and certainly I felt similar to you at stages in my life where I just wish I didn't have this today. And I can't deal with anything today because of diabetes. It's quite a common thing. Yeah, maybe technology can help. Maybe that can lift some of the weight off our shoulders, but I'm not sure that it's ever going to go away. And it does so it does show that you were diagnosed so young, so was I, but we still feel that we don't want this. Can we just have a day off? Can we not do this today? That sort of lethargy about the whole thing. So it's quite
Absolutely,
common.
yeah.
Um,
I feel that it's the one of the very few. I don't say only because I don't want to exclude anything. There'll be someone saying, "No, you're wrong." So, it's one of the very, very few um, conditions that has absolutely zero respite. You can be having a great day blood sugar wise, but you're still doing everything. There's zero respite to it, and I don't think that's acknowledged enough. And sometimes you just got to go back to basics and just kind of re-come to terms with it at times.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I may have mentioned a few times online over the years. Sometimes just take a day, and if you're doing the bare minimum and you're surviving, that can be beneficial to you in the long term for your mental health and even your diabetes health. If you're putting so much effort into it, yeah,
Oh
maybe
yeah,
that can help.
yeah, yeah.
But it's a good subject. It's a big subject, and it shouldn't be ignored. And don't feel ashamed about talking about these things. Men and women on the internet, get on there, have a chat, use the hashtags. It's hashtag 21D, hashtag GBDoc, hashtag doc, and all of those. There's loads of them. Just go on X or Insta or Facebook or whatever platform you use, and yeah, get involved, start talking. But be kind. You can still be kind. Okay,
Absolutely.
Emma, thank you for that because we're going to get cut off. It's going to go and we'll go. So
No worries.
thank you so much.
Thank you
It's
as well.
been lovely to catch up with you. I hope the study goes well. I have no doubt that it will, and we will talk again because I will be participating in your study. If you'll have me, of course. I hope you do.
Of course, yeah, we will meet again.
Thank you. Okay,
All right.
thanks, guys. So, hit the like button, leave a comment. If you want a question, put it down below. I'll send that to Emma. She'll see it. She'll not even answer you on the video. You never know. Sub to the channel. Hit the what is it? It's the bell button, isn't it? Hit the bell button. You'll
The
get a
bell, yeah, hit the
notification about
bell.
new videos. You won't miss anything in future. That's cool, isn't it? Okay. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next time. Bye, Emma. See you soon.
Thank you, bye.